What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of my Adobe Photoshop tips and tricks. I actually had a question from somebody regarding HDR images, and they were talking about my over-the-top dramatic surrealistic effects that I applied in my portfolio of HDR images and how I applied special Photoshop effects to it. But what their main question was what about an image that I took that's not HDR, meaning they didn't bracket for it. So in HDR, high dynamic range, you're bracketing for the shadows and the highlights all together. So you would take a normal exposure, maybe two underexposed and two overexposed, and then you would combine them, you would batch them in Photoshop and layer them and make one hybrid image. What they're saying is what if they didn't? What if they didn't bracket or intentionally shoot an HDR image? Okay? So this isn't going to work for every single image, but I'm going to show you an example of what I would do. So this image is an image of a bell at a memorial, at a veterans memorial in New Jersey. I didn't shoot this or bracket this, but looking at this, it would probably be pretty cool in an HDR shot just because of the texture and material of the bell. The problem is like I said, I didn't bracket for it. I didn't shoot this with the intention of it being in HDR. Matter of fact, I shot this to convert it for black and white for a gallery. There is a way to do I don't want to say a fake HDR, but what they call HDR toning. HDR toning is like the image editing process of HDR that you would apply to an image after you would have bracketed for it. You're not going to get the true depth of editing that you would on a true HDR shot, but on some images it comes pretty close. And I tried it on this one before this example, and it worked pretty good depending on the sliders that you choose and your options. Let me explain. So what I would do is I would go to Image, Adjustments, and then I would go down to HDR Toning. And as you can see here, it automatically applied the default HDR to it. But it looks kind of crappy because it's just throwing the default on there with the sliders all set to their default. Now what you could do is you could go in here. You could actually mess with the presets. Most of the time, they may get you close, but they're not going to give you exactly what you want. You're going to have to mostly mess with these sliders here. Now, the two number one sliders that you're going to be dealing with is radius and strength and detail. Those three are the most important, and then you can mess with these other ones. So what I like to do is I like to pull radius, and this is just my style. I'm going to show you. Watch what happens when I pull the crank the detail. Look at that. Now again, this is to taste. Everybody's going to be different. Much better. Now see, you're going to have to play with sliders. Look at that. Again, it depends on the look that you're going for, but and once you get out of this menu, you could use the regular Photoshop menus to do your regular editing, but this is concentrating on the tones. and detail of the image. Before, after. Look at that. And this was not even an HDR shot image. Before, after. Now it's going to render it. See, converting to HDR image. So don't think, just because you didn't shoot in HDR, that it can't be converted later, because you still have the option to bring it into HDR. That's what's really cool about Photoshop, and they've come a long way with their filters. You know, back in the day, Photoshop didn't even do good with HDR with bracketed photos. Now they've come such a long way, you could do it to even non-HDR photos. Now it's taken a while because there's a lot to render here. Plus, these are big images. I'm shooting on a big, camera, shooting it in RAW. So this is rendering out, and after it renders out, it's going to put the image into Photoshop. And then you're going to have access to all your regular menus and editing options, such as levels, vibrancy, exposure, sharpness, and there you go. So this is all ready to go. This is a nice full rendered image. Look at this. Look at the detail. Look at that. Look at the detail on this. Look at that. Okay. You're getting all the details from the background, the foreground. But I mean, see how it really works with like the chrome and the metal and the bell. Look at that. And then again, if you wanted to, you could take this and you could do your black point, your highlights. You could do whatever you wanted to do. Whatever editing you wanted to do in Photoshop, you have the full Photoshop to take this picture to the next level, whatever you want to do with it. You could even, actually, you know what looks cool in HDR? Is black and white. Look at this. Watch this. Look at this. Like monochrome. Even that looks pretty cool. I mean, look, before and after is just night and day. You know? Pretty cool. That's just some of the stuff that you could do with HDR toning. It gets really crazy. But again, it's nice to know that if you didn't shoot originally with the intention of it being HDR, meaning you didn't bracket for it, you could still use HDR toning effects to a regular image. Pretty cool. Doesn't always work. You're not always going to get the result you want, depending on the image, depending on the lighting, depending on what your subject is, but for the most part, it works pretty good. Take care, everybody. Until the next Photoshop tips and tricks tutorial, I'll be seeing you guys again soon.